All right, welcome to day two of my Hypertrophy 1.0 program. Unfortunately, day one there was some audio issues. It was Labor Day, so I couldn't re-record. But here we are, day two, and we're starting off with the chest-supported T-bar row. Now, I really like this because when you're stable on the bench, on the pad with your in the prone position, then it just reinforces more power and strength because after all, the more stable you are while you're doing lifting movements, the more power and strength you're going to be able to produce, and thus you'll probably get more hypertrophy overall. Now, one little tip that I have for this uh, certain exercise is that if you're taller, like over 6 foot or 6'2", you probably want to lean over like this because if you are using your feet on the pads back here, then you're going to be way more over, then you're not going to get the stability through your chest. So by standing on the ground and bending your knees, it's just a better option. I start breathing, baby, you are the reason. I know my heart is beating right on the floor. And all you can experience is things you hear. Okay, so I'm now on the third set of the chest supported T-bar row. And I just, like I already said, I love this exercise. A little form tip that I use is I try not to get my chest too much off the bench because you can easily start getting your hips and your glutes into the movement if you're trying to like thrust your back up, which can definitely make the movement easier, but we're trying to train our back here. So I try and squeeze my scapular blades together, the scapula together, to force the contraction because that'll work your rhomboids and your mid traps and your lats and stuff like that. Another thing is I'm using the wider handles here because next up we're going to be doing the lat pull downs and that's going to get more of our lats involved. But anyways, let's do the last set. All right, exercise number 2, we got the lat pull down, and I like programming this on days that we do heavy rows instead of lat pull downs because lat pull downs are extremely taxing, whereas this has a relatively low stimulus to fatigue ratio. And what that basically means is it's not going to beat up your joints. It's not going to be super systemically fatiguing on your recovery, but it is going to provide a great stimulus for growth. So it's a great supplement to more of a heavy row like we just did, just for some extra volume without overtaxing yourself. And I don't like to go too wide on these. It just doesn't feel super natural to me. But while I'm doing it, I am trying to kind of lead with my lats, kind of squeeze the peanut, bring my elbows closer to my body. So let's get it. I'm definitely trying to stay kind of vertical here and not sway back and forth too much. I think that's important. You don't want to be making it into a row because this is more of a vertical pull instead of a horizontal. Gonna do my bicep curls before I do my cable exercises, just because of the nature of all the cable exercises being used, all the cable machines being used right now. So I'm just going to skip to biceps and we'll go back to it. Sometimes you just gotta improvise. You know, you're not gonna have everything readily available to you at all times, especially in a busy gym like this. So I'm just gonna start with this. The only time that I'd say that it's not probably a good idea is in the very beginning of your routine, because you want to be doing those heavy hitters in the beginning while you're the freshest, because if you do them later on in your workout, then you're not going to be able to attack them with the most vigorous and intensity as you possibly can. Anyway, we're going to be doing a couple sets of bicep curls, just the traditional barbell curls. I like to flex my glutes while doing this because it stabilizes my hips, and then, you know, kind of tighten my core because it'll stabilize my lumbar spine, my thoracic spine. And it just makes the movement a little bit more strict than it otherwise would be. Really just focus on curling, because that is the flexion of the biceps. So just enact elbow flexion. Okay, after each set of biceps, I like to turn around and add in some sort of wrist curl for your forearms. I don't think enough people train their forearms as well as their biceps. Okay. Set one down. As you can see, I'm trying to keep my body as rigid as possible and just focus on using my biceps. It's easier said than done for sure. I'm definitely probably sweating a little bit, but you can't fully isolate any muscle group anyway. You can only try to. I like supersetting biceps with forearms because forearms are relatively easy to recover from. So it's not like a superset that's really going to mess up your form too much. On another exercise, it's not like doing squats with bench press or something crazy. Okay, last but not least, for the biceps, we're going to be doing the machine curl to get a good like peak contraction out of the lift. And then we're going to be supersetting it with these 15-pound weights. So I can do some wrist curls and extensions in a superset fashion. I like to basically how I add up my volume in these workouts is when you're doing like some sort of row or pull down, obviously the bicep is the secondary mover in those lifts. So I count them as half sets. Because after all, the primary mover is obviously going to be your back, but you're still using your biceps during those lifts, so you should be counting them towards your total weekly volume in the given program. So that's why if you download it in the description, you'll see that bicep curls, there's not as many sets as the rows and the pull downs because you're already hitting them, obviously. So all right, without further ado, let's get into the first set of machine bicep curls. I like this one because it really fits in the joints. There's not much room for error. Any machine. Okay. You guys should definitely be trying to get close or reach failure completely. That just guarantees you're going to get the most out of your sets. Okay, I'm doing my first curls now. All right, set number 2, last one for biceps. That was a little tough. In biceps, I find that I don't need to rest quite as long as other exercises, which is nice. You can kind of like speed run it within reason, Try and go past the burn. I know the burn feels like you're almost done, but sometimes you gotta like 10 more reps in there. Remember, we're hitting forearms anytime we grip something, so we don't need a ton of direct forearm work either. I'm gonna finish off lats now with the straight arm lat pull down. I really like this one because this actually doesn't really involve the biceps. It's just focusing on the lats in isolation. And I just think that that's like a good combination because when are we ever hitting lats? We're only hitting lats in like compound lifts where we're actually involving the biceps and the forearms and all these other muscle groups. Well, this is just focusing on the lats. So I think it's kind of a nice addition, especially if your lats are a weak or lagging body part, like I believe mine are. So let's get into it. Try and keep your arms relatively straight. They don't have to be perfectly straight, but and then make sure you're going all the way up and all the way down as far as your biomechanics can allow, because you want to be getting as much of a stretch in the lats as you possibly can, because the stretch will elicit more growth overall. And try and get the failure. It's okay to have some force reps at the end as long as you had good form for the rest of your sets, I'd reckon. All right, that's gonna do it. I really like using the bar attachment for those because I feel like the rope attachment is much more flimsy. And just like I said earlier, you want to be getting as much stability as you possibly can out of the movement. So if I feel like the bar has more stability for me, and that's good for me. If you guys feel like the rope is better for you, then please by all means use the rope. That's the cool thing about working out is like it's not a one size fits all solution. You kind of need to figure it out for yourself. And that's when creativity comes in and it gets more fun, in my opinion. Okay, we're almost done with the program. We got the rope face pull next. And I actually do prefer the rope in this movement, even though it is less stability, because if you're using the bar, you might just hit yourself in the face before you get the full range of motion, because this is a rear delt exercise mainly. So we're trying to bring the arm behind the body like this. So if you have, a bar, then you probably stop short of the range of motion before you get all the way back. And range of motion is very, very important. So with this one, I'm doing 4 sets. And that's because this is kind of like more of a compound lift for the rear delts. And then we'll finish off the workout with some rear delt flies. Make sure the eccentric is slowed down and the concentric has some power. Get those type 2 muscle fibers firing. I really like the rope face pull because alongside your rear delts, you're also getting like some lower to mid traps and your rhomboids too, because you are doing a row. It's just more of a rear delt focus row because of the angle of pull. So you're almost getting some extra back work too, which isn't really a bad thing unless you're overdoing it. You know what I mean? I try not to thrust my hips forward that much, but it almost happens naturally just to stabilize me. I think that this exercise would probably be taken to the next level if you included like a bench for your chest where you're seated. Has more stability, as I mentioned before, equals more power and strength, and thus more mechanical tension and hypertrophy. So that'll probably take it to the next level, but I don't have access to that right now, so gotta improvise a little bit. Frick. I don't go too heavy on this exercise in particular. I feel like some exercises are definitely built for doing high repetitions rather than lower ones, and vice versa. There's also exercises that are built for lower repetitions, higher weight. It just all has to do with, the muscles being used, the amount of force it requires, certain things. So I wouldn't try to max out on this or anything. Just because I don't think that that's what it's suited for. If you want to max out on something, max out on like a barbell row or a deadlift. But you can totally do it. It's last but not least, I'm finishing off with the single unilateral um, rear delt fly, cable fly. And I really like this one because you can enact shoulder adduction across the body, which provides a great stretch in the rear delt. So you're really stretching out that shoulder, and then you can go back. And whenever you can have a stretch, I think that it's a benefit. Versus something like a machine fly, like on the pec deck machine, you're totally locked in to right here, and you can't actually go through, adduction of the arm, which is just moving the arm across the body. You can totally do this unilaterally like me, or you can do it bilaterally. Totally up to you. If you're short on time, I recommend doing it bilaterally because you're doing half the amount of sets if you do it bilaterally, if you think about it. Try and maintain your arm being as straight as possible. And then really focus on moving that shoulder back and forth to get that stretch. It almost feels like I'm going to cut my throat off with the cable. It's kind of odd when you have to like bend the cable past your chest, but it is what it is. Okay, only 2 more sets of the rear delts, and the reason why it's only 2 more is because we just wanted those. Then we did 4 sets of the face pulls, so then we're gonna be hitting 7 sets in total for the rear delts in this particular day. And then next, what would it be? Friday, we'll be doing back and biceps again, and we're gonna be hitting 7 sets for the rear delts again for a total of 14. And then, week 2 is 16, week 3 is 18, week 4 is 20, which is gonna be really hard and a really long day. But after that, we can take a deload where we basically just half the amount of volume or intensity, or we could just take it off entirely. It's really to just completely do away with all that fatigue that we've built up over the course of the 4 weeks. And then we can totally run it again if you want. I think a lot of people tend to skip their rear delts just because they think that they're hitting it low enough on their row with their rowing and their vertical rows and their horizontal rows. But I think that the shoulders are probably like the most important part of your body to develop if you want a good physique and whatnot. So I wouldn't skip out on your shoulder training. Plus, it's not that difficult to do some flies at the end. The only time that I'd say that'd be really challenging is if you are just short on time in general. Make sure that you're controlling the negative, aka the eccentric, the best that you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to do super slow, but just make sure that you're controlling it. All right, guys. That was the end of week one, day two. I'm sorry about week one, day one. Like I said before, the audio got all messed up and it was Labor Day, so I couldn't come back and re-record. But I'm gonna try my best to not let anything like that happen again. Anyway, next up on my routine is the sauna. I'm not gonna take you guys in there with me, but if you have access to a sauna, I very, very much recommend that you guys use the sauna because it increases blood flow, which increases, nutrients and growth factors and whatnot to your musculature, and really just helps you get into that parasympathetic wing of the nervous system. Because after all, weight training like this is a super sympathetic or fight or flight response wing of the nervous system. So you're literally increasing your blood pressure and all these things. So the quicker you can get into that rest and digest parasympathetic wing of the nervous system, the quicker you're going to be recovering and the faster you're going to see progress, in my opinion. There's not a huge amount of data on the sauna for weight training, but from what we've seen, it is a good thing. And it's also just great for your health in general. So I like to use it every single day that I can. But hope you guys like this. See ya.